I want to welcome everyone to today's town hall with Judge Lynda Jones, one of our general sessions judges, who has been kind enough to join us today to speak with MBA members about operations in the general sessions courts. She is actually the presiding judge of the Davidson County General Sessions Court, so she can speak to operations in her own courtroom and also in the other courtrooms, and also some interesting and, of course, unprecedented things that are happening in General Sessions Court right now. Welcome, Judge Jones. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you. And I just heard from Judge Robinson. He'll be joining us shortly.
Wonderful. Well, to get us started, can you just talk to us a little bit about what the day-to-day looks like in your courtroom and in the AA Birch building in general?
Well, it actually is kind of wonderful because I don't know if you're familiar with the chaos, the organized chaos that used to be General Sessions Court. Instead of having 10,000 people a week in our building, we're now down to about 400 a week in our building, which is actually really nice and quiet and calm and orderly. And we established some social distancing rules, I want to say early mid-March, and everybody is following those for the most part. We limit people in a courtroom to 10, and then we have social distance 6-foot markers out in the hallways, and we've been operating on a minimal schedule of jail docket only for people who are arrested for misdemeanors and felonies. We have a mental health committal hearing docket because that's very, very important. We have a domestic violence jail docket, and then we are slowly going to add back in one courtroom at a time and keep our social distancing rules in place. So, you know, it's still General Sessions, but it's a lot quieter, which we actually get more work done. It's wonderful.
For the hearings that are happening in person, I know you mentioned some of the social distancing measures that you put into place, but can you talk a little bit about how those hearings are working, practically speaking?
So they're working very, very well. Our recovery court, for example, which I hope Judge Robinson will address, is via Zoom conference. Our mental health committal hearings are all via video, and we're fortunate that Davidson County has the technology to do that. Many counties in Tennessee do not have that technology, so that people can remain at the hospital, still have their hearings, still appear in front of the judge within 72 hours. And that was actually kind of a seamless transition because we've been doing quite a few video conferences there in the past. The courtrooms, everyone has been so cooperative. We've done some video conferencing with interpreters, and the lawyers are very respectful of social distance rules. Many of them have young children, so everybody's really worked really, really well together. Our clerk's office has been great to work with. Our district attorney has been wonderful to work with, and just reached out to the sheriff this morning, and he is going to monitor and filter the amount of civil warrants that are served so we don't have too many people falling on a court date. So we've set up some new dockets when we open up again to the general public on May 4th, where we'll have dockets every hour, and it will be a limited number of cases, so we won't have, again, that crush of 10,000 people in the building every week.
Great. And I see that Judge Robinson, I think, is joining us right now.
Great.
While we're waiting for him to get connected. Oh, there you are. Hi, Judge Robinson. How are you? Thank you for joining us.
No. See if I got unmuted. Yeah. Okay, I'm good.
All right, we can hear you. We were just talking about the in-person hearings that are still happening in General Sessions Court, and Judge Jones actually mentioned that you're holding recovery court by Zoom. I wonder whether you could talk to our members about how that's been working out.
So right now we're holding recovery court over Zoom. We had it this morning, started at 10. It was about an hour and a half. One good thing that I'm very proud of, my director had a Zoom meeting with all of the directors of specialty courts around the state, and most of them are having problems with people absconding, and we're not experiencing that. Our folks are doing well in recovery court. You know, we've got a couple that we had a good talking to this morning, but all in all, I'm looking forward to being back to a face-to-face communication. I think that's awfully important, especially in recovery. And we're talking about maybe doing having folks come in, the phases coming in by themselves. Like right now, phase 1 and 2 come in each week, but we're going to try to limit the number of people. Slowly trying to get back to what's normal, I guess.
Yes. One question I have for both of you is whether other matters on your docket that don't meet the exceptions for an in-person hearing are being pushed to other months, or whether you're also addressing those matters by some sort of remote means.
Let you answer that. You've been.
So we have had a few emergency landlord detainer actions where crimes have been committed, and we have had some of those hearings in person. And the video capability, we could do a lot more video if our wonderful Metro Council would grant the courts the funds to go ahead and get equipment for the General Sessions courts. So we've had to do some of those in person, and starting May 4th is when we're going to start slowly phasing back in those civil hearings and then eventually bond matters. Of course, domestic violence cases are up a great deal, so we've been discussing how we can start handling those, and Judge Robinson is one of our 3 domestic violence judges. So I imagine he probably has some ideas about how those order of protection dockets need to go that he's been discussing with the other 2 judges.
Judge Robbins.
When we go back up criminal bond dockets, I think we're going to see a pretty good backlog. We haven't had a domestic violence criminal bond docket in probably, 6 weeks. So I'm looking at a backlog. Allegra and Anna and I have briefly spoken, but I know that May the 1st, that's when we rotate. Anna will go to the DV criminal bond docket, and Allegra will go to the DV jail docket. I'll still be in the general rotation, but I'm going to make myself available when I finish my dockets to help them catch up on their DV dockets. You know, there again, we're just going to have to crawl before we walk, and hopefully not move back into this thing, you know, too soon. I think it's time personally, but I'm ready to come back to work. But we're just going to have to feel our way through it. This is something I think new for all of us.
We have some unique challenges for some of the like auxiliary departments that we work with. For example, the Gene Crow Advocacy Center has a number of single moms in its employ, so they have a child care issue. And I imagine there are some district attorneys also. So everyone is struggling how to keep their employees safe, what to do with their children since their children are out of school. And hopefully we'll get these things sorted out in the next few weeks. The judges have been pretty good about being able to rotate and handle things. We're a pretty hardy bunch and happy to accommodate if we know what the home pressures are that are being faced by defendants and petitioners and victims and attorneys. We've been generally able to work with them because these are such extraordinary circumstances.
It sounds like you're both anticipating that you are going to start having some additional in-person hearings that maybe fall outside the exceptions right now. In other words, things that right now you can't have in person. Is that correct?
May 4th.
Okay. And do you anticipate that we're going to get another order from the Tennessee Supreme Court addressing the suspension of in-person hearings?
We won't know until tomorrow. I don't know that I don't know what the Supreme Court's going to do yet.
I did receive one question from one of the members of our audience asking if they have a case that was set several months ago for early May. Should they anticipate that it will be reset in order to accommodate your new procedures?
No, they'll need to speak with the clerk's office to verify, to check.
One question that I have also is when you do go back to having some in-person hearings, it sounds like you've already been able to exercise some social distancing protocols with there being around 400 people a week in court, but with an increased number of people, what do you anticipate you're going to do to help continue to socially distance?
So we're going to slowly open additional courtrooms so that we still have a small amount of people in each courtroom per day. So for example, when the sheriff's back warrants, the back civil warrants that existed prior to March 14th are served, they're going to be spaced out amongst 3 courtrooms. So we will generally gradually increase from 400 to 600 to 800 people per week, and those will be spread out among more courtrooms. It'll be 6 courtrooms, actually 7, as opposed to the 3 we have operating right now. So it's a slow phase in, and it will change every 2 weeks depending on the statistics and the numbers. I've been following the White House guidelines and the mayor's guidelines and trying to make sure we're complying with both executive orders. And so that's why we're doing a slow phase in. And if the numbers go back up, then we may have to just keep it smaller and have no more than 800 people in this building per week.
Once you do go back to having in-person hearings, will masks and gloves be required of people appearing at the court?
Masks will be strongly recommended and encouraged, and we will have disposable gloves available. We have an order of disposable gloves ready, and we're having a judges retreat next week, and we'll be discussing what's going to be mandatory versus recommended, and we have a lot of things to discuss at our judges meeting next week.
And for matters that are going to be on the docket in this more spaced out format, how will lawyers and people appearing before the court know when their case is going to be heard and what courtroom? Is that going to be on the website?
Well, so what's happened is they will receive their subpoena, and the district attorney has been working with our security detail to call out witness names and defendant names. And so it really involves, mainly on the criminal side, the defendants walking back and forth. Our security are going to have a list of the dockets so that they know the individual defendants' names. So there'll be more docket sharing information so that we make sure that we don't miss someone. And obviously, the beauty of General Sessions Court is that, you know, anything that goes wrong can be fixed very quickly. We set aside default judgments on a regular basis. We allow people time to get an attorney. And so if something gets missed, which I think it will be smaller to miss because we'll have limited numbers of people, I think we're going to see some really good things happening. I've been really, really impressed with our police department and our bond office booking people over the last 6 weeks. They only had 1 paperwork error out of all the hundreds of people that have been booked, and that got fixed today in 1 day. So everything's going very, very well. Slower has actually been more effective, and the district attorneys are telling me they're getting more work accomplished.
I think a lot of us can say that. I'm going to take a brief pause for a minute and just remind everybody on the call, if you have questions for our judges, if you'll use the chat function at the bottom of the Zoom screen, and you can just send a chat question, and I'll pass those along to our judges. Judge Robinson and Judge Jones, another question that I have is, once this COVID-19 pandemic has subsided, whenever that may be, and we go back to full-scale operations, do you anticipate that any of the measures that are being taken now will just become part of our everyday? For example, will you still incorporate some video hearings and video conferences in your regular operations, even though maybe in the past that hasn't been part of it?
Well, I anticipate the answer would be yes. I don't think that we're going back to what I have known for the past 30 years as being normal operation of a courtroom. I think that moving forward, that we're going to see more and more remote hearings like we do on the MTMHI docket. I just foresee that we're going to have a different look moving forward, and maybe for the good.
I think there will be some good changes going forward. Some measures will stay in place. I know the district attorneys are combing their files and deciding what they really want to prosecute and what they don't want to prosecute. They're preparing a couple of days in advance. And just by the nature of the volume of General Sessions Court, attorneys often don't have the time to prepare. Now they're finding the time. And I think there are going to be some good changes in the long run that'll stay around even after COVID is over.
One change that has come about because of all of this is that I believe the criminal courts and general sessions courts are allowing email filings. Do you anticipate that that's going to continue into the future, and what changes can we expect?
Well, I know the lawyers love it, and I think that'll have to be decided by the judges and the clerk. And we definitely want input from the Nashville Bar Association. If that's something that the Bar Association really wants, then obviously we're here to serve, and we need to listen to all their input. Takes many, many hands to run the judicial system. So we're happy to hear from the Bar Association.
What has been the greatest challenge in these times in trying to manage your dockets and manage the court?
Now, the greatest challenge is I want to get back to work.
You have two of the workaholics here on the CLE today. And we love our jobs and we love to work. So, it's challenging to stay at home and want to be working. And so we're getting lots of orders done. We're getting very, very organized around the Birch building. And so challenges, I would say, is just understanding the obstacles that maybe lawyers face in visiting their clients at the jail. That was a new one that came up today. And I actually had a defense attorney who usually rails against the sheriff's department praising the sheriff today. And it was wonderful to hear. So I was glad to see that everyone's working together, because we're all in this together, even though we're at different levels of the storm. But everyone's being cooperative and empathetic, and it's just been refreshing. I mean, I can't imagine a better place to be.
That's really good to hear. I have another question from our gallery. In terms of jury trials in the Birch building, how many do you think have been rescheduled, and do you know what the procedure will be for handling those trials when they do resume?
Well, we don't do jury trials, so you'd have to ask the circuit court judges that.
And I can share, I thought you might have some insight on it, but I can share that Judge Dalton did address that in her town hall. So for the person who posed that question, if we will have that recording on the Nashville Bar Association website, so you can go back and see what she had to say about it.
Mm-hmm. We're too busy to keep up with the circuit judges.
Makes sense to me. Let me ask you another question that we've got from one of the people on our conference. On the criminal bond dockets, particularly domestic violence dockets, how liberally will continuances be granted, either because the victim is unavailable or the defendant is unavailable? And if they will be liberally granted, what proof will be required? For example, health records or doctor's notes.
Well, on the domestic violence side, and I can only speak for myself, but I would be willing to bet that the three of us are going to be pretty understanding as it relates to granting continuances. I don't want anybody up in the courtroom that is not feeling well. I don't want anybody in the courtroom that's sick, whether it be with COVID-19 or any other thing. So I think moving forward that's something that's going to play. I've never been a real stickler about having a bunch of medical records to prove something that someone's sick that can't be in court. But I think speaking for Anna and Allegra and myself on the DD docket, we'll have to do it on a case-by-case basis, of course. But we're going to be accommodating to both sides and be, give both sides the opportunity to be prepared and go forward. And if it means continuing it because a party or a witness is sick and can't be there, everybody's just going to have to be understanding about that.
Judge Jones, do you have anything to add on that one?
No, not at all. I just,
Okay.
I'm happy. I feel like I have a lot of very caring, empathetic colleagues. When you get to know these judges and work with them personally on a day-to-day basis, you'll find out they have amazing hearts and souls. And I think, they realize we're all in this together.
What is something that you wish all attorneys that have cases in your courts would know about your current procedures or about what's going on in the courts that you feel like maybe hasn't been either communicated or heard?
Gale, can you think of anything?
Not off the top of my head. We all have different styles. We all have different management styles of being in the courtroom. But I think all in all, if the lawyers will show up, and they'll stay in the courtroom and they're prepared, things move a lot quicker, things move smoother, and we can get the business tended to.
Well, I won't speak for all the judges, but I know I just like a prepared lawyer, somebody who's thoroughly interviewed his client and is prepared for the case.
We've heard from some of our other judges about their communications with judges across the state and with the Tennessee Supreme Court during these challenging times. Can you fill us in on what, if any, communications you've been having outside your own court, but with other judges that are maybe experiencing the same things and how you work through those problems?
We have a weekly statewide conference call with all the general sessions judges and the Supreme Court, and it's been wonderful. And of course, Gale's been on the bench for a long time. I've only been on the bench for 5 years, but I have been speaking to judges in other counties just to hear what they're going through and what they're dealing with. The rural counties have different issues than the urban counties. And the more we share ideas and knowledge, it's been wonderful. The National Association of Women Judges has been really great on communicating. We have a constant email thread going on technology that's worked in different states and different jurisdictions and different issues faced. So the more knowledge that judges share, I think the better off our entire judicial system is.
What do you anticipate the backlog? How long do you think it'll take the court to work through any backlog that this has created?
I'll let Gale estimate. He's the experienced one.
I don't think that we can set a time limit that will be caught up. I think we just have to take it one day at a time and deal with what we've got. Hopefully in the guidelines of our mayor and our federal government and the Supreme Court, as things move on and as this thing lessens, I think we'll be more and more, have more and more people coming to court. And I don't think it'll take that long. I think all 11 of us in the General Sessions Court are dedicated to ensuring that folks have the opportunity to get heard.
Yes.
The General Sessions Court recently heard a petition filed by the public defender, and as I understand it, held a hearing with all judges sitting by video conference. Can you talk a little bit about that experience and how you handled it, how it went, and what we can learn from it?
Well, I think it flowed pretty well. I think the attorneys were able to articulate some of the issues that several judicial systems across the nation are facing. And I think our court came up with a unique solution in mid-March to hear those cases on a case-by-case basis on a video docket, which was very safe for everyone involved. I think we released about 80 individuals who were high risk when presented to us. And so we saw no reason to change that. The case-by-case basis was working very well. So I think we just had to make our decision based on the safety of the general public. You know, some people don't need to be out in the general public.
And just from a technological standpoint, how did it work to have that hearing by Zoom with, or not by Zoom, I guess, but remotely?
It worked very well. We had a camera out at the jail at each building. There were attorneys present, one individual at a time. General Funk came in and presented those cases himself. And I have to tell you that Ms. Johnson and Mr. Funk have been working more hours and been working more diligently and I've been on conference calls with them at 10 o'clock at night. They are both working very, very hard. And Ms. Johnson has a very hard job, but she's doing it very well.
I'm going to take another moment just to remind the participants on the call, if you have a question, if you'll use the chat function. I have a couple more questions myself, and then we're going to wrap up the town hall unless I get some more questions from the lawyers. So one thing that I've heard a lot of lawyers and judges talking about over the last few weeks is trying to find the silver lining in this unique situation that we're in. So I ask each of you, have you found a silver lining, or what are you most grateful for during this interesting time?
Gale,
I know Judge Robinson. I was going to say, I know Judge Robinson.
I haven't found any silver lining yet, but I think if something could be taken forward from what we are experiencing, is that the new innovations that the courts and the defense bar and the civil bar have come up with are things that probably needed to be looked at, and this pandemic has brought that forward. And moving forward, like I said before, I think we'll see more and more of the technology in our courts. And I think it'll be a good thing for all involved, the lawyers and the judges and the litigants, and may bring more efficiency to having matters heard.
And I think we've accelerated criminal justice reforms that have been coming from the state level and a national level for a long time. I think the DA has been forced to decide, does he really want to prosecute a trespasser? Does he really, what does he want to pursue? What do we as a society want to pursue? I think public policy decisions will change. I think what I enjoy most about the current way we're running the courts is the quiet order. We have this beautiful building that's only about 12 or 13 years old, but when you have 30 police officers and 100 defendants and 20 victims, and they're all in one small courtroom, it's very loud, and the acoustics bounce around, and it's sometimes difficult to hear. And because, right now we only have 400 people in the building, the courtroom is very quiet. The judge can focus completely on the testimony of the witness. There are less interruptions, and we seem to be getting through more quickly. And that has been an absolute delight, because, people's liberty is serious business. And it's been nice to just focus on one case at a time, case by case.
I have another question from the group. Other than Zoom, have you used or evaluated any other web conferencing platforms for court use?
We use WebEx for the Middle Tennessee Mental Health Committal hearings. WebEx has been very successful.
Is there anything else either of you would like to share with the lawyers of the Nashville Bar Association about the operations in your court and how you're adjusting?
Gale, do you have anything?
Only that I think we're all ready to get things started back up.
And we value the lawyers' input. They are an important part of our system. So if they have ideas, feel free to share. And if their ideas don't get implemented, it's nothing personal. It may be that there are things behind the scenes that they don't know about, but we always have an open ear and are open-minded.
Well, we thank both of you so much for sharing your time with us today and talking through these issues with us. And thank you so much for your leadership during this time. And please let the Bar Association know if there's anything that we can do to help going forward.
Well, thank you for inviting us. We appreciate it. And thank you for all the Bar Association is doing. The newsletters are wonderful, and we appreciate your leadership.
Great, thank you. Thanks for being with us. And for everyone on the call, tomorrow we'll have a town hall with some of our chancellors. So check out those details through our email and on our social media. And this will conclude our town hall with Judge Jones and Judge Robinson. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank
Thank
y'all.
you.